Welcome to Lolita's Garden. You know I like to do these kind of quick. This is a quick overview of the garden at the beginning of spring. It's been extremely slow growing just because of constant rain and very little sunshine. Today is a great day in contrast. So come on down, let's get started. Here, my broccoli. It's the one thing that's doing really good in this weather. I think they really enjoy this 70 degrees every single day. We've got two varieties. One is the Calabrese broccoli that we've grown in the past years, and we're trying this new one called Piracaba, which seems to be more of a stalky cut and come again type of broccoli. We'll see. Here's where we keep our cabbage over in this part here. It looks like it's doing okay. Could probably be doing better. But we've got a slug problem. In this weather, there's just no keeping the slugs off unless you're out here picking at them all night or willing to buy some poison. I'm gonna have to issue an apology letter to the land of tomatoes after this year. I started these poor suckers in February. They sat on my seedling table until they were too big, and then they lived in the greenhouse for another 6 weeks after that. Finally put them in the ground, only to have it cloudy and 70 degrees every single day. Here we've got a big fat row of jalapeno.
Jalapeno. That's how you pronounce it.
I put up a lot of those 2 years ago. We didn't grow any last year, and now this year we're in need of them again. So we've got some kale and some onions, and I've even scattered a couple corns around the place just to see how well they'll do. And as much as would germinate, we put down a cover crop of clover, which has been working out really well. If this clover weren't here, the whole area would be covered in ground ivy. That nasty, insidious, stinky, viney ground ivy. Put up a small row of sunflowers right here in front of the greenhouse, hoping that in the heat of the dead summer or late summer that some of that solar energy will be blocked by these enormous stalks. We'll see. In an attempt to stack a little bit of functions, I have placed the loofah up against these sunflowers to grow up. We started another crop of spinach in this other raised bed. This is a cold frame all winter, and the spinach stayed in there all winter, and then just at this spring it started to bolt, and we ate as much as we could before it did that, and then we tore it out and we started a new one. These cold frames where I planted lettuce this spring are just blowing up. We can't have enough salad to keep this in control. In between here, this is Wong Bok Choy, which I kind of expected to turn into a head like Napa cabbage, but it's just going to flower right now. So as an experiment, this is still in the experimentation stage. You can see the slugs absolutely ravaged it. In the corners and in the cracks, we got comfrey growing. This is starting to beautiful purple flowers. We're about up to that point where we're gonna hit our 1,000th subscriber soon. We're at 951 right now. Subscriber 1,000 to our channel. You don't have to comment. You don't have to see anything on my blog or follow me on Twitter. You don't have to have anything but the luck to hit that button for the 1,000th time and a name. And then I'll call this whatever your name is, this area here. Is that Goofy? That's Goofy. All right. The business wanted to put in a little water feature here, I guess for the bees to come and drink from. So we put up a galvanized, this used to be our cleaning pail, and we just kind of filled it with water and some aquatic plants, put a little pump in there. And this is something we're going to work on later this year. We're going to get this to be a little bit bigger. Hint, hint. In an effort to get just a little bit more growing space out of the garden, I put this up where the beehive used to be. We used to have a beehive sitting here, and I put a little tiny garden bed here, covered it with some clover, and put in some lettuce and some of those Piracaba broccoli, which the slugs have thoroughly enjoyed. Again, another bok choy cabbage that's just going to flower. So that's it for the top garden. This is the sunny side of our garden where we get the most solar exposure. And on down the bottom side we get a little bit less. So let's take a look at what's going on down here. There's these fruit trees that I planted last November. They seem to be doing extremely well. There was a bit of a blossom and then a frost. In fact, the day I installed my bees, there were plum blossoms out and the bees were all over them, which just made me feel so good inside. In fact, every once in a while I come out and find myself a ladybug that I take and chuck inside the greenhouse because we need them in there. The aphids are getting nuts. This year I got borage on like crazy. I put 20 plants in around the garden and I got another 20 inside ready to come out. So we're going to have a lot of purple pollen in our beehive this year. Another good bee-friendly plant is calendula. I put another 20 of those in around the garden. We've got some bee balm and some oregano. This is one of the healthiest beehives I've ever had. This is a swarm I caught in about the middle of May. It was up on somebody's house and my wife got the call and I went out there and scooped them off the house and into my box, and it's a very strong hive. It's one of the strongest I've ever had, and the queen is marked blue for 2015, which means that I scooped up someone else's managed hive. She's laying really well. They're gathering nectar, gathering pollen, and filling out the frames in that box just fine. This hive, on the other hand, isn't so strong. I installed very early. I got a package in the middle of April, put it in the house for 2 days because it was going to be stormy and cold both days and there would be no way I could install. But they absconded 3 days after I had let the queen out. So, well, live and learn. But the queen had at least left one egg that they could emergency sell into a new queen, and now they're back on track. She's laying, they're collecting nectar and pollen, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars got a little bit of comb on them, and that's it. So they're at a slow start for having started, in the middle of April, but it's kind of an early time for this time of year in this area. This fence line was nothing but weeds and weed-like trees for ages, and I finally just came out here and just tore them all down and got everything back to a nice growing area. I planted millet all along the back of this fence line. They'll grow up nice and tall and have big fat purple flowers. We've got raspberry here, raspberry there, a couple of big giant mammoth Russian sunflowers, a patch of corn, and then just to see how it does, we've got some sun-loving stuff. There's a jalapeno pepper, and some Roma tomato. Just to experiment. We had plenty of them and not enough room for everything, so we brought some things down here just to see how they'll do. If you've been with us since last fall, you'll remember this was once a pile of leaves as high as the end of this fork, and now through the magic of decomposition and me spreading them out on the garden, there's nothing but a little tiny pile left right here. These 2 stalls here have been treated with, this one got nothing but urine. This was a big pile of leaves. It's been turned a few times, but I put nothing in there but pee. And this one, which I get from working in the workshop, sometimes there's an excess of pee when I'm in the workshop. Come out here, dump it on that. Then this one was chicken scratch. Everything from the chicken coop came out here, and we piled it in there. So pea seems to be doing pretty good at decomposing these fall leaves. These are all leaves gathered in November, and they were full, boy. Over here in what used to be the pile of firewood, we made a bed, and I put up butter crunch lettuce, some of that long bok choy, and a bunch of pole beans. But there was a frost, real late frost, killed the pole beans, so we're restarting those again. But these are old Christmas trees, has trellises. You know how I like to reuse stuff. Hey! I'm talking! You know how I like to reuse stuff, so yes, last year's Christmas trees from around the neighborhood. The rest of them became shredded mulch. Because the chickens were such fans of our garden, they ate all of our garlic and our onions over winter, so there's none of that in the garden this year. But we put up a fence, really cheap chicken wire fence with a little gate just to keep them out. Oh my goodness, really? Speaking of chickens, let's dip in here and see if they got any eggs. Oh wow, I didn't check before we got this shot, but looks like we do have a couple eggs. Inside the glory of the greenhouse, we started some potatoes as an experiment for the first time. Never have grown potatoes. And those are marigolds up there. So I'm really curious to see how the potatoes will do, just because it's going to get especially hot in here. It's going to be South Carolina hot in here during the height of the season. So I'll probably put a fan in just to keep it well ventilated, but really curious to see how potatoes will do in this raised bed. And that will about do it. Thanks for watching. Take care.